Okay, right. Let's get started in the meantime. Okay, so today's session is about building intelligent document automations with generative AI. This also covers a bit on active learning. To get started, let's see what our use case is about. So in this one, we will talk about the introduction to the problem and the solution space and give you an intro about how active learning works. We also have a couple of use cases that will also show you how to build a solution and also tell how this has been done in one of the real use cases. In addition, once Monica is in, she will also talk about, okay, she's already here. She'll also talk about the consumption and monitoring part as well when it comes to the document understanding. Hello, Monica. Good morning.
Hello, and sorry for being late. When you wake up super early to meet all you guys, but my laptop decided randomly to update. Thanks for kicking this off, Lahiro. I am
No
sorry
worries.
you have to deal with me like so. It wasn't really much of a choice.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
yeah. Hello
Yeah,
everyone. I'm super excited to be here. Lahiro, would you like me to continue?
yeah, sure. So I just gave a quick intro about the session today, and I also answered few questions about how to learn document understanding. So yeah, over to you.
That's great, thank you. So it seems like I have a busy crowd. So today we're gonna start to talk about the problem and the solution space. So basically, me and Lahiro have chosen a use case which we're trying to automate. We're gonna talk about that, and then we'll show you how you can do the automation of it using Document Understanding Studio Web and Studio. For this, I'm going to show you the new active learning experience in document understanding, where building a model is easier than ever, and you're expected not necessarily as a data scientist to be able to build your custom extraction and classification model by labeling documents very easily. And then finally, once building it, consuming and monitoring it, it becomes easy as well due to the same active learning experience we show you and due to the way the user is guided through his journey. After we show you what we have worked on in the sample use case, Lahiro will talk about the real deal by presenting a real production use case, which he and his team have implemented for a customer of theirs. And we're going to close off with the Q&A. I don't want to keep you much longer, so I'm going to go right into the use case. So today we're going to talk about the reimbursement of business trip requests. I just realized you're sharing things I hear. We can switch eventually when we get to the demo part. So for this use case, you may know that in various circumstances, working for an enterprise makes you end up in a business trip. It may be the case that a customer has invited you over to help with his either automation needs or other such requirements, and employees often incur expenses during these business trips, which they then need to reimburse. To do so, they would need various documents like receipts, hotel invoices, and business trips invitations. And they would probably need help from the finance department to expense those. As an RPA developer, Isha is working in finance and needs to automate the expense management. And she has heard that document understanding can easily do that. Can you help me with the next slide? Thanks. So basically what we're going to do today is the following. We have three document types: hotel invoices, pretty unstructured documents for which data extraction would really become a challenge. From where we need to extract the check-in, check-out date, bill to name, and hotel and invoice total. I'm sorry, hotel invoices, which are semi-structured documents, which may have various layouts. Extracting the information from them may be challenging, however, not so much. Therefore, we need to extract check-in and check-out date, bill to name, and invoice total. We have receipts, which are nowadays pretty standard, from where we need to extract the date and the total. And finally, we have business trip invitations. These I meant that are unstructured documents and very hard to process because the information may really be spread throughout the document, and they may even be handwritten for some customers. And from here, we need to extract the trip start and end date, employee name, and finally client name. But of course, after extracting the information, you don't get much value out of it unless you really do something with it, right? So eventually, after extracting this information, she needs to verify that the data on the business trip request is the same as on the hotel invoices and that all the dates of the receipts are within the business trip period. Now, if the invoice total is more than $1,000, she needs some extra verification. So she will have to ask some of her colleagues to double check the documents. And if the data is valid, she'll create the corresponding expense reports in Concur. I hope this sounds familiar to some of you guys. Anyway, I'll take like here the screen to show you how we would automate this in document understanding. So while document understanding already provides some out of the box models, it does do so for like 40 something documents. But for more custom use cases, which are lesser standard, it provides you a interface for you to label your own documents. And I'll show you how this would work. You may already be familiar with document understanding, but in case not, you would eventually find it somewhere in your automation cloud instance. If you don't, you may need to enable it. However, it is enabled with all new account creations. And then here you have two options, either to create a new project, which allows you to create a document understanding project for training your custom models, as I mentioned we would need, or create an automation, which allows you to leverage one of our out-of-the-box models and just go to Studio and automate whatever it is you need. However, we don't have an out-of-the-box model for hotel invoices, neither for business trip requests, which makes me create a new project. And I'll just call it expenses project. And here you have two options to either use the classic interface or the modern interface. And here under the advanced option tabs, you can as well configure the OCR settings. For example, you can choose another OCR method if your iPad document OCR does not work for you. For example, you may want to try out our extended languages OCR currently in preview, which is able to deal with Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and more languages generally than the iPad document OCR. However, this is still the one we recommend as a default option unless you have to work with a specific language. I'm gonna leave the default option as they are and just go ahead and create my new project. Creating this new project would directly ask me to provide some documents as input when I open it. Because these would be basically the documents I train my custom model on. So I'm gonna go ahead and click to browse. I already have some sample data prepared because that's fun. And I have, for example, a set of receipts, which I will quickly upload. And what happens is that in the background, document understanding tries to classify those receipts for you and eventually group them into various buckets by document type. It already started with receipts. This could as well have been mixed documents, and they would have been automatically classified and grouped by document type. However, I was mentioning that we don't really have an out-of-the-box document type for hotel invoices. And in this sense, I'm planning on adding one. To check what out-of-the-box models we have available, you can check here. Many, but not hotel invoices. Also, the out-of-the-box models can be used as a base model to just fine-tune the model as per your custom document types. So if you don't want to start from scratch, I could have well started from the invoices model or invoices Japan, China, whatever, and just start my custom fields. But as I want lesser processing and lesser labeling, I will just add my new hotel invoice document type. And then I would add here the corresponding documents to it. I already prepared a set of sample documents. Eventually, I would need to upload them. And then notice how here I got some recommendations. This is the guided part of our experience in which we basically want to guide you as a user to build the best performing model. And I know that, for example, choosing the right samples for your data set, choosing the right number for your samples of data sets, labeling on the most error-prone fields can be challenging. So in this regard, we plan on providing these recommendations to you. You need a minimum of 5 samples to train any model. And it's complicated. It's not really that the more you add, the better results you get, but you kind of need to find a sweet spot, which we're trying to guide you upon. In my case, I would need at least 5 samples to train invoices, but I don't want to train invoices. And this is actually not an invoice, this is actually a receipt. So I'm going to go ahead and modify the classification results into receipts, which has moved the documents for me from the invoices document type to the receipts one. And now that I kind of have the group by document type, I want to go ahead and annotate them so that I can enable the extraction of them. In this sense, I have here this annotate option. And if I click on one document, I get the new annotation experience. This is somewhat similar to the document manager or Forms AI, if you are familiar with. Uh, Rather Forms AI, because I also get the fields pre-labeled so that I just have to check the validity of them, eventually make some changes if they're not correct, and move over to the next document. I can, for example, see this as the vendor name. I have it here in pink, and you can see similar how it is underlined in pink to correlate the data from the document to the field extracted, a vendor address. The phone number is missing from this receipt, so I'm fine to mark it as missing, date, total amount, tax amount, and receipt number. As I'm very happy with the extraction results, I just confirm and then I move over to the next document. But in a similar manner, I already have all the fields pre-labeled for me. I just need to verify them, and this is valid for both regular fields and column fields. When I click here on column fields, I would see the respective table fields, and I'd be able to basically modify them on demand. Let's say in my case, I don't need to modify them. I am very happy with them. So I'll just minimize this, I confirm and move over to my next document. And basically this is what you would do to train your custom model, starting from a pre-trained document type, having everything pre-labeled. If you want to add an extra field, you can do this by using this option. However, I don't want to add an extra field. I want to move over to my hotel invoice, which I will also annotate. And here I would define my fields. I would add a new regular field for check-in date. I'll give it a shortcut to work with. And then a new one for checkout date. Oh, and I'm sorry, this is actually not a string. This actually should be a date. So from here I can modify the content type of it. And I'm gonna provide a shortcut for it. Here I can also choose the date format, but I'll leave it as autumn. This is actually a date too. And then finally, I'm defining a third field for the total amount on the invoice. which is a number. And then once I have my fields defined, I can go ahead and label. For example, for the check-in date, I select the portion on the documents which I want to assign to the respective field. For example, like so. I can as well use hotkeys for the checkout date. I conveniently defined O as hotkey, and this would be the total. Again, once I'm happy with my document, and I can move over to the next one. If I already have a model for it, I would eventually also have the pre-labeling feature enabled. But as the training has not started yet, and this is because of insufficient training data, because of course we just provided it one input document, I need to manually do so. So I would eventually go on. This is the check-in date. This is the checkout date, and this is the total. And I would go ahead and label all documents like so until I finish. And once I have a minimum amount of data, I can either go ahead and test my model or add new data for it. And to do so, notice how here to the left side, I kind of have like 4 components: build, measure, publish, and monitor. The build part provides me the ability to upload such documents, to work with them, label them. I have recommendations, of course, to improve the performance of my model, but with few documents and few labeling data, I can't really ask for more than a poor performance. And then I can move over to the next step, which is measure. Again, provided we have enough data, I would have here some more other recommendations or a better score because of the data I have part of my data set, and a similar recommendation as to the build, actually the same, which are guiding the user through improving the model performance. And once I also go over the recommendations and I'm happy with my model, I can go ahead and create the project version, which I will then consume in automations. Now, as I don't want to label all the documents with you guys right now, because I think you got the point, I'm going to show you a pre-trained project for the same expense reporting use case. So I was telling you I added 11 hotel invoices, which I have also annotated. So if I go ahead and look at the details of one, I can see that I have values for all the fields required. And similarly, I have a receipts one, which again has the minimum amount of data just so I can demo the feature to you. In the measure tab, I can see the project score and I can see the respective score for the classification and the respective extraction models. And yes, I admit I can do a better job. Given more data and time, I would. And then finally here in the publish section, I have a couple of options. I can choose to create a new project version, and here I would choose the models to include. So whether I want classification, enable, and the other two extraction models. And then once I create and deploy it, notice how I have here the option to automate my process. Using these options, I can consume the previously created project versions in either an RPA workflow or integrated via API. So for integrating it via API, you may know we expose document understanding as cloud API, so you can consume them via whatever programming language. And here we provide some code snippets for Python, Java, C#, and Node. In this regard, so as to provide the app ID and secret to authenticate and the file name you wish to work with. And what we do is define a method which digitizes the document for you, extracts the data from the document using the first extractor found, and finally prints the results to the screen. And then in a similar manner, we have a code snippet for Java and the other programming languages. And basically you would go ahead and copy code, paste into your favorite IDE, maybe Studio, and then just go ahead and consume the APIs. However, as we also know that we are all that we also are fans of RPA developers, we also have the following two options. Continuing the journey in Studio Web by opening an automation consuming this version in a Studio Web cross-platform workflow, or open the same cross-platform workflow in Studio Desktop. Now I open this browser from a Mac, so I don't have the second option, but the hero will show you how you would do this a similar thing in Studio. So to begin with, I'm gonna go ahead and open the automation in Studio Web. What happens in the background is the following. We create a workflow for you, which allows you to consume the previously deployed document understanding project. If classification is enabled, we use the classification model to identify the type of the document, and then we would iterate over the results and extract information from respective documents. If you wonder where do I have documents from, that would be a fair question. While creating the workflow, we also upload some of the sample documents you provide at the build state in a sample orchestrator storage bucket. And then during my workflow, I would download the files from the orchestrator storage bucket, iterate over them, and then perform the document understanding operations. So as mentioned, I have here this storage bucket. And then for each sample file, I provide some output, I download it, I classify it. Notice how here I have this expense reporting project, which I have previously shown you with the V4 classifier. I log the document type of it. If I find hotel invoices, I use the extractor corresponding to the hotel invoices document type from the same project. I create a validation task just kind of for like testing purposes, because in real life you won't always validate. Even in our use case, we said that based on certain conditions, we need to add a validation task. It's not that you always have to create one. However, for you to see the results of the extraction, we found it useful. Now you let me know otherwise, and then similarly for receipts. So I'm gonna just go ahead and run this automation where I realized that I may have had other files in this storage packet, but yeah, I'll just explain you how this would work. Not sure exactly what input it would get. Okay, so it's gonna try to work with the business trip invitation letter, and we're gonna have a look at that and understand why it could not extract data from it. I can see here the process of it. So the file has been downloaded. We run classification of it. And then the classifier classified it wrongly as receipts. I know that if I would be looking at the confidence score, it would have been a pretty low one. And now information is being extracted from it, probably using the receipts extractor, and then the validation task is being created for me. And then the validation task I can simply open by clicking on this button to open it in Action Center. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on unassigned items. And then on this task, which is created a few seconds ago, yes, okay, it's wrongly being classified as receipts, and this is the information letter, but basically what happens is that I would validate the content of the documents, and then once I'm happy with the result, I would submit my result, and it would be print on screen. Let me just add something. I add this as vendor name, and then this would be some date, and then I'm happy with it. And then finally, I would print the result on the screen. But I was mentioning about how we don't always process out of the box models, out of the box document types, or standard document types, which are supported out of the box, like invoices, or some for which we can gather enough data to build our custom model from. We also work with unstructured documents, as you have seen, and I'm happy to let Lahiro show you how you would process, besides the two I've shown you, also business trip invitation letters, how to classify the tree, extract information from it, and of course add the business conditions and business logic in the workflow, so I don't have to validate everything. Lahiro, would you like to show us how you do this in Studio?
Yeah, sure. Hey, so thank you. Let me share my screen now. Uh, Okay.
Your
Um,
own.
okay, so I'll start from where Monica stopped, and we were looking at the Studio Web solution. Now I'll show you how to get started on the same solution and get started on the Studio desktop. So in the Studio Web, if you go to the project screen and click on this little button on the right hand side, you have this option to open it in Studio Desktop. All you need to do is just click on this, it will download the solution and open it in the studio. So this is the extra thing that I'm going to show you. Let me scroll up. So when you open that solution in Studio Desktop, this is how it will look like, the usual familiar interface. And just take a note of few things. So here you can see this is cloud compatible, and when you open the Studio Desktop, which is when you open a cloud solution on Studio Desktop, it will automatically be connected to your cloud. So that means all the changes you do here will be automatically reflected on your web solution as well. This is also cross-platform supported, and we are using the activities document understanding activities, not the document understanding ML activities or the intelligent OCR. This is a different one. Um, so that gives us access to all those activities Monica showed earlier. In addition, we also have a few more things. So in this workflow, I'll just explain what happens here. The first one is I'm trying to get these documents from an orchestrator storage. So for that, I'm using the retrieve sample files, this activity. And in my orchestrator, if I go there, um, yes, this is my storage bucket, and I have three documents: a hotel invoice, a receipt, similar to what you saw earlier, and this is the business invitation letter. So what happens now is it will get the document list from the orchestrator storage and try to process one by one inside a loop. So this is just one way of doing it, but if you have your data in other places like SharePoint, Google Drive, you can still use those activities and get your documents into your workflow. So now let's use this for each loop to loop through these document list that we get as a part of this activity output. The first thing we are going to do is download that file into a local folder so that we can process it. And when you're downloading, this output of this activity is of this type. It is iLocal resource. It's not the file path that you're getting. It's the resource type variable that you get, and that's the one that you're going to use for the classify document activity. So in here, I'm using a generative classifier. So by default, when you just add this activity here, it will show you all the projects that you have created in your document understanding interface, what Monica showed earlier. And so I'm using the predefined project because this generative classifier is already given to us, so I don't need to create any project to access it. So set it as predefined and select this as generative classifier. And now I need to give a prompt to specify how to identify these documents. How can you do that? It is like this. So you can simply specify the document types on the left hand side. It can be hotel invoices, receipt, and business invitation letter. You can specify it in any way you like. And for the prompt, you need to say, uh, you need to basically describe that document a little bit. So if it's an invoice, you can just explain what an invoice is. And based on that information, it will go through the document and figure out whether it belongs to any of these things, and then automatically classify it to the best suitable one. So that's how the generative classification works. And when it comes to these prompts, you have enough space to write a good description. But when you're writing, just make sure you keep it very straightforward and don't put a lot of unnecessary information. So keep it to the point always so that it's easier for the model to understand what you're looking for. Same for classification, same goes for extraction as well. And so we do the input of as the downloaded file, which is the output of this activity that comes like this. And this will give us another output called classified document. This is my variable, and the data type of this is document data. Inside this, you'll have all the information that you usually get from the other activities when you use the intelligent OCR. If you remember, when we use these activities, you get a lot of additional information like the taxonomy, the document object model, the document text, and all those things, right? So here it is much more simplified, and all that information is automatically given to you through this document data variable. That gives us the classification result. And now I'll just focus on the invitation letter part because Monica already showed you the hotel invoice and the receipt on the pre-trained models. So how can you decide, how can you basically get the output from that classified document variable to identify what kind of a document this is? So you can use this variable name, and after the little dot, you can use the display name, and that will give us the name of the classification or the document type. And this is directly coming from that classified document activity, the name that you mentioned on the left hand side. So you can match against that. So once you figure out whether this is a business invitation letter, then you can do the extract document data. So this is the next activity. And again, we are using the predefined project, and the extractor is generated. And for this document, I have three fields that I'm going to extract, which is the trip start date, trip end date, and the participant name. And again, just like before, we need to give a prompt to do this. So you can simply ask when is the business trip starting, when is it ending, and who is invited for this. So again, just remember to keep it simple and straightforward. This way you can extract the values. But what if you also want to do some transformations while you do the extraction? This can also help you in the validation steps because you don't need to do a lot of validation if you can get the data in the same format that we need. In addition, you can also reduce the number of activities that you're going to use to transform some data. So for example, if it's the date, I can really ask to give me the date, not just in the format that you see in the document, but in the format I need. So in my case, I need the date format in this format. So I can specify that. In addition, if you also have tabular data and you want to extract it in a structured way, you can also do that. And When it comes to these generative models, these things work mostly on text. So it will, by default, it will not give you a tabular data just like how you get in the other activities. But here, in your prompt, you can specify that. So if, for example, let's say you have line items in an invoice, right? If you want to extract in a structured way, maybe as a JSON, you can specify the JSON format. You can say, I need to extract these line items, these columns, and this is the structure I need that info. And it will automatically get the data in that format. So all you need to do is just convert that to the format that you need and do the processing. This is the extraction part. And in here, if you look at this input, I'm not using that file input that I did for the classification. Here I'm using the classified document, which is the output of the classified document activity. The reason to do that is to tell the extractor that this is a document of this type so that we basically give all the information that we know about the document so that it can do the extraction. And again, output of this will also be a document data type. And this is my next variable, invitation letter document data. And now remember, we are inside a for each loop. And I need to create an action to verify this information manually. So how can I create the action inside a loop? Well, we cannot wait inside a loop, but we can create the action inside the loop. So I have used this create validation task activity. These activities you can find under this section, under document understanding. And the input for this is the output of this extract document data, which is the invitation letter extracted info. And under properties, you can configure in which orchestrator folder, which action catalog you are going to use for this. The one I have selected here is the default one, and you don't need to create this if you don't have it. It will automatically create it for you. The output of this is a validation task. In my case, it's the action data variable. This one I can use outside this for each loop in a different sequence. So I have used this here in this wait activity. This will, once it reaches this point, the flow will get into the suspended state. And when it resumes, it will continue from here. Before I run this, I'll also show how I have done this validation, this flowchart over here. So you can do this validation depending on your use case. And sometimes if you want to do a validation before you present it in the validation screen, you can also do that. Apply some rules and decide whether you really want to do the manual validation or not, and then create the task. In my case, I am doing this after the manual validation so that I can show you the interface. So I have a few validations. I need to check the name, and I also need to check whether I have extracted valid dates, the check-in and check-out dates. Then I need to check the receipt date and the total. How can I access this data? If I go here, now I'm going to check the name against the hotel invoice. So this is the output of that hotel invoice extracted data. So if you go into that variable, you can see different properties. You can see data, document metadata, document type, and so on. Under data, you can access the all the fields that we extracted, like the check-in, check-out, and so on. And you can access the field and its confidence. If you have multi-values, you can access that as well. The OCR confidence, extractor confidence, all this information is there. To get the value, you need to use this value property. Once you get that, you can do the same with the other variables as well. So in my case, I'm checking the name in the hotel invoice against the invitation letter. In the invitation letter, my name goes as participant name. How does it know about these names? This is coming from the the extraction data activity that we configured, and it's using the exact name that we specified in that, without spaces, of course. So this is my first check. Then comes the second one where I check the dates. So you remember we already extracting the date in a specific format. So I don't need to do a lot of transformation. I can simply check, do a try pass and see if this is a valid date. And if it is a valid date, then I can go on with the next step. So this is more like an added validation that I'm doing. And here I'm checking the receipt dates to make sure it is within the invitation letter, the period mentioned in the invitation letter. I can just do a date comparison and see what that is in the same way I did earlier. So that's how this flow works. And at the end, once you have all the data, once you are happy with the validation, you can continue the rest of the activities, which includes updating it in an internal application or writing into an Excel file. It can be anything. This is the simple flow. So let me run this and show you how this works. In the
Right.
meantime, Monica, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I wanted to say running Lahiro because then I want to show you how Lahiro puts down production. No, I'm kidding. He's not breaking anything, but we do offer as part of document understanding um, monitor component, and so I was showing you as I was showing you to the left side, where you can basically see how your document understanding automations are performing. And you can as well have a list of process documents where you would kind of like either debug or look at where to improve your models by being able to look at the results of your automation. And once Lahiro runs this in Studio, I would eventually show you some monitor data. However, it won't be the monitor data corresponding to Lahiro's files because it takes some 20 minutes to reach our servers and to be ingested in our database and to be retrieved from there. But yeah, this is what I meant. And also one last thing, you've seen La Hero adding a lot of business logic. This is to reduce the amount of manual effort required because it won't help very much if you try to automate the process but do not add business logic around it, because this would basically mean you just get a document in, extract it, but if a human in the loop anyway needs to take a look at it, then how does it really automate something? The point for us is to reduce the manual effort required.
Yes, and just to add to that, through this validation steps, actually, you can also try and see, you can basically do a cross validation. Like, for example, I'll take the invoice. So you get the line items, you have the total. So you can try to make sure if that, let's say the total of the invoice, if that is really the total, you don't know unless you check it. So you can try doing a cross validation, like getting the total of the line items and adding the other information and checking whether that's the exact total that you extracted on the other field. This way you can verify all the fields that you're extracting within your validation, and even if you can write it in a such a way, you can automatically update the wrong fields with the correct values as well. That way, you even omit another manual effort that's needed. In the meantime, this went into the suspended state. So I'll go back here. So I'm in my action center. Try to find it. I'll assign it to myself. This is the invitation letter. So you can see the extracted data, the date, and the name. And you can also see this classification info that we passed to the extractor. So all you have to do is just verify the info and just click on submit, and that will trigger the process again. So I'm running it through the studio, so I need to manually resume it. But if you're running it as an unattended process, it will automatically resume. The orchestrator will take care of all that for you. And just before I resume, I like to show you something. So you can already see the extracted info from the receipt and the invoice over here. And now let's continue and see how our validation was. Take a few seconds. Yeah. Go to the output. And here you can see how the validation happened. And through the logs, we can see the name is matching, the dates are good, and the dates are between this specified period, and likewise. So this is how you can do a validation. Before I hand it over to Monica, I just came across this and like to show you. If you want to know more about writing good prompts, some good practices, follow this documentation. This can help a little bit. So when it comes to prompts, you might need to do a little bit of prompt engineering time to time, depending on the complexity of the document. So this can help you. Okay, so that being said, Monica, over
To
to you.
that, I also want to add that while yes, you're right, the documentation is a very good starting point and it would help you with your prompt engineering. There are also some nice articles created by our MVP members, including Lahiro, either on YouTube or on their posts to achieve a similar thing. I think Lahiro even have a quite complex one for extracting tabular data using generative. I don't know any other such videos, but I would also give those a try because yeah, generative models are mainly as good as our prompts. So prompt engineering is kind of like a hot skill to have nowadays. And yes, this helps, but do not only use this. Get out and yeah, also know, let us know how it's working for you because it may be the case that you're facing bugs, case in which we want to help. But yes, now that Lahiro has run his automation, let's see whether he's broke anything. But he didn't. He didn't. I just want to monitor what he is doing. I just want to see whether we can improve automation rates. And in this regards, I have this monitor section here, which kind of has like two components, project performance insights dashboard. Now this one's in preview and we plan on improving it a bit. So mainly changing the metrics which we display here. And you have here several information with regards to your document understanding processes, meaning that all processes which run or automation, sorry, which run either via RPA or API report here data. And we have here the time spent processing documents, average time per page when validating, estimated time saved, so you can link it to your ROI. You have here a trend of the time spent processing documents and other document specific metrics like hotel invoice, like the top 10 most used document types. Now, in our case, the project only contains two. And this is filtered by the expense reporting document understanding project. And you have metrics with regards to classification, classifier use, extractors, here you can see I use the extract document data for what endpoint and number of times it has been used, extract fields and their confidence score. So eventually, if you want to update anything, you can also rely on these. For example, oh, I can see here that the receipts, the invoice's name has a pretty low minimum confidence. I would like to improve it. Okay, then I'll add more data for it. Now, besides this insights dashboard, we also have here a list of processed documents. This list is populated by all the by all the documents which are run through an automation, either RPA or API, using the project we are in, so the expense reporting project. I think this was my business trip invitation run, and this was, did you have such a receipt sample? You may have had, I think this is Lahiru's because it's from today, created date and last updated date, and I can look into details about what has happened to this document. For example, I can look at the extracted fields. If there would have been tasks created like a classification validation or an extraction validation task, I would be seeing the information respective to them here. I would be seeing who has been assigned as validator, who has completed the task, what has been modified. I would be seeing, I have here the predicted value, and then if the value would have been modified by a human in the loop, I would be seeing something here as a post-validated value. Similar, I see here the extraction of date. I see them highlighted here in the document so I can easily map them. And all these metrics are meant for us to display how document understanding is performing in your automations, as well as how you can improve them having, so, or it is for you to leverage the data and then maybe improve the models if you want to achieve more accuracy or better results or so. So this, all these things I've shown you for active learning are currently in public preview. You can give them a try, let us know how they're working for you. And yeah, eventually we plan on GAing them for 24/4. While these are very nice and we're happy to have worked and invested a lot of effort in them, we also provide the generative features which allow you to process unstructured documents. Here, I think you have a very nice use case with leveraging generative AI in a real world implementation. Would you mind telling us about it?
Yeah, sure. So let's share back. Okay. So when it comes to this generative extraction, this is a nice use case that we came up recently. And there was a company who into education side of things. So they actually create a lot of educational content for children in their country. But this content they prepare has to be aligned with the guidelines that's given to them by the government and several other authorities. And these guidelines are coming to them actually through unstructured documents. Just think about a legal document. That's how it looks like. You can imagine how a legal document is and how lengthy that can be. And you usually have paragraphs of text and different sections where you need to go through and find the information. So in their case, there were few people who did that manually at the time. So they basically had to download these documents, go through it, and identify whether such information is there in that document, and if so, extract it in a specific way so that they can pass that information to other people to prepare this content. This also requires some transformation stuff as well, like getting the data into a JSON format and so on to support the other activities. So they take a lot of time to do that. So we proposed a solution on UFR document understanding with Gen AI capabilities. The main reason to do this is it's unstructured documents, so it can be very tricky to train a model on all these different unknown layouts that you can come across. Gen AI is a much better solution and it is very fast to develop as well, as you have seen now. So with Gen AI capabilities, you can provide a faster solution delivery and get good accuracy levels with less manual involvement and reduced processing times. This is the use case. I don't have a video as such to show you because it's a bit internal, but in high level, the flow looks like this. So we had like two different workflow solutions. One is a general dispatcher solution where you just go into this web portal, look for the information, download the files into a specific location. And what we do is we load that information to orchestrate a queue, basically the file path, to keep it simple. Why we put it into orchestrator queue? Because we like to process this document understanding part separately as a separate job. Let's say you have hundreds of documents. I don't want it to run it inside a sequential a loop because that takes a lot of time. If I have multiple licenses, I would like to process those parallel. That's why we are using a queue, and the document understanding process will get triggered through a queue trigger as soon as you add a new item. And in that process, we just do the classification and just do some verification by applying some logics to make sure we don't need to do any manual verification. And then comes the data extraction part and something similar to what you already saw. And at the end, we update that information into Excel file that is defined in a specific structure, and they can use it for the other activities. This was the flow. So some of this information that we extracted was really given to them as a JSON structure that was written in the Excel file. The reason to do that is because the next step that they do requires some JSON input with that information. But the good thing about this activity is you can also do the extraction from unstructured data, but you can also convert it through the same activity to the format that I need. So two things are done in just one go. So yeah, so this is something that we did recently.
This sounds great, and I'm sure you've helped a lot of people by saving a lot of time for them because, especially in long, unstructured documents, information is kind of like everywhere. And unless me having to read through the entire document and really meticulously browse for the information to be extracted, your automation helps me highlight the most important pieces of it. Was prompt engineering difficult, Hero? Because again, hot topic.
Yes. So we don't have the training part, but the prompt engineering is something that we need to figure out. It's more like a trial and error thing. So you just
Yeah.
cannot say that this is the best prompt that you can always use. So it depends on the document, depends on the data that you want to extract. So you just need to try a few things and see what gives you the best result. Just try to learn a little bit about engineering, how to write a good prompt, and that should save your day.
Sounds like great tips. Yeah, so thanks for watching us. This was kind of all for our presentation. We wanted to show you our latest features as well as the real world scenario, which I felt that added some real touch to the entire thing because hey, it's not only pretty stories which we POC, but like Hero really did manage to implement this. If you guys have questions other than what's been raised in the chat, me and Lahiro kind of try to catch up with them. A question from a customer coming from Sailaj, I hope I pronounce your name correct. Sorry otherwise. A question for a from a customer when things are easily achievable using Due plus Gen AI, why they have to go to Due template or Due activities configuring taxonomy manager ethical? Very good question. So as Lahiro also mentioned, we have the Alt Intelligent OCR framework. However, we work on defining this new framework using cross-platform activities, the one both me and Lahiro have worked on. And basically with this new framework, we plan on simplifying the work for you, so you also have to do lesser manual effort. You don't have to define the taxonomy anymore using the new activities, and we're working on a new Due template with the cross-platform activities. As a general guideline, we recommend you implement your automation using the new cross-platform activities, which are part of the document understanding dot activities pack. You can use them in both Studio Web. You can use them in Studio Web, Studio X, and Studio. And then if you face any limitations because the two activity specs are not yet feature pair, switch to intelligent OCR. However, for extraction and classification validation use cases, you could leverage the new activities. So I encourage you to give them a try and let us know how they work or what is missing for you, because we keep improving them and you help shaping the product and prioritizing the features. One major miss we currently have from the cross-platform activities is splitting, but know that this is something we work on. Other than that, functionality is mostly available. Splitting, and I would also say training for the active learning experience, because those are some pieces available in intelligent OCR and which we plan on bringing over to the new document understanding activities. Let me know if I have answered. Cool. Happy to.
I think there's another question, Monica, that you may be able to answer better. So regarding the AI unit consumption, the question is like this. It it would show for overall projects used, but do we have any tab that shows for a single project consumption? Will it be enabled anytime in the future?
Very good question. So we hear you loud and clear. We plan on working on a dashboard which provides you details into how I spend my money or how my AI units have been consumed. And in this regard, we would show total AI units per organization, per tenant, per product, per document understanding project, what document types have been processed, similarly for communications mining, AI Center, and all other AI products. However, as this feature requires input from multiple products, it's currently in progress. I don't yet have a timeline, but it's planned for latest October. We may have a preview earlier, maybe June or something, but we hear you.
Okay. And I think someone also asked about the studio environment. When you open a solution, it opens in your personal workspace, but that doesn't really stop you from like working with other folders. You can just simply connect to the another folder through that little button on the in the below tab in Studio, and you can access the resources in those. That is possible.
Thanks for answering. Do you have any other questions? Because if not, I think we get couple minutes back. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed our presentation and I hope it was insightful to you too. Give the features a try and know where to find us. Lahir nicely shared our LinkedIn profiles. We're available there. We're also available on forum. Both of us reply to your questions. And yeah, thanks everyone. Talk soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. See you later.